Against the power of Mordor, there can be no victory. We must join with him, Gandalf. We must join with Sauron. It would be wise, my friend.
Tell me, friend, when did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness?
Welcome to Kermode Uncut. You'll be aware that at the end of last week, the news broke of the passing of Christopher Lee, a screen icon. He was still working well into his 90s and one of the most versatile performers around, despite the fact that for many people, they still thought of him in terms of those Hammer Dracula roles, which first made him famous. In fact, he'd done so much more than that. For an entire generation of viewers, he'll be remembered as Count Dooku from George Lucas's Star Wars prequels, or as Saruman from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. And of course, he was an amazing singer, had an extraordinary operatic voice. I remember once him coming on the radio show and bringing on a CD of him singing I Was Born Under a Wandering Star. And he won heavy metal awards for albums like Charlemagne by the Sword and the Cross, which really have to be heard to be believed.
We must stand up and wage war. This has gone on for too long. It's in all of our interest to subdue them once and for all.
I met Lee a couple of times during my career. The one I remember most clearly was back in the 1990s, 1991 I think it was. I made a documentary that I've spoken about here before on the blog called Fear in the Dark for Channel 4, and it was like a history of horror movies. And I was involved in the interviews for that documentary and also in doing some rewrites on the narration. And Christopher Lee had agreed to narrate the documentary, which is a really big coup. And I remember being in the sound booth when Christopher Lee was there recording this narration. He had this extraordinary voice that made everything sound important. And there was a moment in the narration which referred to sharks and piranhas being terrifying things in the 1970s. This is in the wake of Jaws and, of course, Piranha, the original Piranha. Christopher Lee read this out and he said sharks and piranhas. And I went, and I put my finger on the talkback button. I said, I'm terribly sorry, but I think you said piranha. And he said, yes. I said, I think you said piranha as opposed to piranha. And he said, yes, that is the correct pronunciation of the word. Really? I always thought that word was pronounced piranha. He said, the word is pronounced piranha. And I said, okay, I'm really sorry, but because it's the title of a film, would you mind terribly? And he said, what, you'd like me to mispronounce the word? And I said, if it's not too much trouble. And he was incredibly gracious, and he said, fine. And we recorded the commentary with him saying piranha. And this stuck with me for ages and ages, the fact that he corrected me on the way that word was spelt. And I checked it out. Here's what it says. This is a book, Piranhas, Everything You Need to Know About Them. The word piranha is correctly pronounced piranha, with the accent on the second syllable and not the commonly heard piranha. See, Christopher Lee was right, and I was wrong. Never argue with a man of that status and learning.